Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do my 2020 reading stats. So this took me a little while to get it all together because of course I wait to the end to do it all. I mean, I collect stuff during each month, but I don't do anything really with it. And my mid-year doesn't always help because that's only half the stuff and you still have to redo it anyway. So I restarted and did it all. It took me a lot of hours. Anyway, so of course I don't have any pretty graphs or anything because I don't know how to do that. And I've forgotten every Excel thing I could do except for the easy stuff, so maybe someday. So I'm just going to kind of go through. I have a trusty little list here to kind of go through them. Again, it's not everything. I'm not going to be able to show you really cool things, but I'll tell you the highlights of my reading stats because, again, I think I love stat videos however I can get them, so I'm going to enjoy this. So anyway, so I will explain certain times I'll be talking about every book I read, which includes all my rereads, and sometimes I'll be talking about stats that are just the books I read that were new to me. Because there's certain areas where I want to track everything, and then there's others I want to just track the new books for those percentages. And so I'll explain them on each one. So how many books did I read in 2020? I read 154 books, and then again, that's every book that I read. So that averages out to 12.8 books I read on average per month. There were some months I only read like 6 to 8. I had a couple 8 months. I can't remember. I thought I had one 6, but maybe it was more 7, 8. And then I had a couple months that were over 20. So it just depends on the month and what I was reading. But the average for how many books I read was about 12.8. And again, reads and rereads. Of the books, then I break it down, the next section, into how I consume them. Physical, I did 81 books, which was over 52.5%. Then I had 13 ebooks for 8.5%. Audiobooks, I had 23, which was pretty good, 15%, and then 37 for 24% of my reading was rereads. So not super surprising. I mostly read physically, and my rereads are pretty high. And this year was a lot higher due to April and May, when I read pretty much most of my books I read those months were rereads due to pandemic. And then for so I did this books like for every book that I read. I read 49 male authors. I read 99 female, 6 that were collaboration between either multiple females or multiple males or female, male, or whatever. I didn't have any trans or binary this year. I thought I had 1 or 2 and I didn't. So that was last year. So I need to source out some of those. I just haven't, I don't know. If I did read it, I didn't know it. So something I need to work on. Of the new books to me, again, when you add those up, it's 117 that were new books to me that are how many I read. So of those, 82 of those I owned, which is 70%, which is really good for me. And again, I'm going to say mostly because the library was closed for so many months. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason why I hit that 70%. And I was looking to get close to 70-75%. So I got 70% even because the libraries were closed for a few months. But I got like a whole bunch of library books right before they closed. So anyway, 27% was the library, which again, I was trying to get below 30, so I think I did okay, 27, but I got to be careful in this next year. And then 3% just, was for my parents. I borrowed a few books from them. So anyway, that was my other. So really, I mean, I read 70% from my shelves, which I think is really pretty good. I didn't count all my manga and graphic novels. I did read 15 altogether, a combination of those. 9 of them were graphic and 6 were manga. Only about half of those were counted in my books read because some of them were really big graphic novels, but none of the manga did I count. So I count graphic novels and not manga in my stats for some reason. I don't know why, but I just want to say I read 15 graphic or novel or manga this year. which I think is down just because I didn't have access to the library for some of them. So then my rereads, of the 37 rereads that I did, 28 of them I counted as, like I got to count the pages because it'd been so many years. So after I hit a couple of years past it, I'm able to count the pages again because I'm reading it pretty closely. It was a book I've read within the last year. So like there were 5 rereads that I had already read once this year, and I read in 2020, and I read it again. And one of those, another book I read like every year, so I don't count a couple of those I don't count for the pages ever. So 13 I didn't count, so in my little way of doing it, and one of them I left unfinished. It was a reread, and I just never finished that book, so it's not counted in anything. It wasn't counting pages, and it wasn't counting anything. It was one of the newer rereads, so it didn't count. So I know this sounds kind of weird, but again, I have a thing with my rereads. Now I track them to see how many, as I said, 37 books that I read this year were rereads. So that tells you I'm a big rereader, and I like to count them. I count them differently, and it's just my own little system. So I'm sure that was very confusing. Sorry about that. But just so you know, 28 of the 37 I counted the pages for in my numbers. DNFs. So this is always surprising, and I'm so glad I track it now because I don't even track everything. So I have made a mention on this channel that a lot of times I will get stuff from the library and just try it, and I go, oh, this isn't for me, and I will immediately DNF and just go, this is not for me. I mean, I can't even tell you. Probably half the library books I get happen like that. Like I will try them and be like, no, it's not the time, or no, this book is not for me. And I will never mark it on anything because I only made it 20, 25 pages. Usually if it's over 40 some pages, I will count it as a DNF. So there, of the books I counted that are DNFs, I DNF'd 21 books in 2020. And 8 of those though were odd DNFs. They're ones that I put back on my TBR thinking, this is just not the time for these books, or I got partway through them and I didn't have time to get back to them. So they're like, I've started them, but I'm not sure I want to come back to them. They're still on the fence. So 8 of those are still on my TBR. And then, so I've pulled the quantity of pages that, from the ones that all those, I counted the pages for all the DNFs, and it came up to 1586 pages for those 21 DNFs. So on average, I was DNFing at 75.5 pages. So that is really good. I usually wait till about 50 pages to DNF, but there were a couple books I DNF'd way into the hundreds. And so it kind of threw that average off for me. But as I said, I usually give a book about 50 pages. If it's under that, I don't really count it. But a lot of times, yeah, I don't. Anyway, so, I mean, I was giving the book 75 pages usually, at least before I DNF'd them. So that's pretty good. I gave it a shot. I think that's pretty good. Average pages. Oh, okay. So how many pages did I read this year with how many of the books that I actually finished, plus all the DNFs? I read 40,791 pages. So, again, several of my rereads don't count. So there was like, you know, as I said, I think 13 books I didn't count any of those pages for. But those were, again, books I've read recently, so it didn't count. But so I would have had more if I'd counted those again. But over 40,000 pages for me is really good. So I have no issue with that. What did surprise me is how low my average per book was. So I took out my DNF pages and just divided that quantity by the 117. No, that's not right. By the 154 books I completed. And it came out to 287 pages per book. So my average is definitely lower than it has been by my tracking. And Goodreads, which I'll tell you in a little bit, was a little higher. So I'm not sure how that worked. But it's definitely, this year I'm going to try to focus on some bigger books. But I do seem to still pick up small books in between. So we'll see how that goes. But it was interesting to see that my average page length was 287. I was just kind of surprised. With, again, books that I've read. So, and I'm going to track my page count differently this year to try to get if the number will make more sense to me. Okay, so of the new books, 82 were fiction, so that was 70% of my reading, and nonfiction was 35 books for 30%. Well, this is exactly what I want. I wanted at least 30%. Did I say 35? I meant 30%. So, of fiction to nonfiction. I think that's a really good number. Yeah, it would have nice been to 33%, so it would have been a third, but I didn't do as much in nonfiction November this year. I just wasn't feeling it, so I only read a few books. I mean, I still read some, but I didn't read all month that. I switched it up and did some other things, which I'm glad of the books I read. So normally I would read a little bit more in November, so I think I lost a few books that way, but really, I still did really good and again, I didn't count in my rereads because all of those were fiction, so I took that number out. So really, it's much better than last year. My number, I think it was a couple percentage higher, so I think I did pretty good. Anyway, I want nonfiction to still be a very strong presence in my reading. I'm not up to be 50-50, but I think 30-35 would be excellent. So I hit 30, I'm surprised. So I liked that. So of my genres, let's see, I should have counted 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have 19 that I tracked, and actually 2 others that I kind of pushed into other ones. So I have almost 20 genres that I tracked this year. And I'm just gonna, the percentages, again, this is counting reads and rereads. So I wanted to see where I am, and someday I'll have a pretty graph, but I want to talk about the top 5, and then I'll just mention what the other ones all are. The top 5, number 1 that I read the most from was Paranormal Romance this year. Now, again, you have to understand, I reread 5 or 6 books in one series. I reread a lot of Paranormal Romance from Nalini Singh as well. I did Jennifer Ashley this last year. And then again, I pick up that randomly through the year. So it's not a surprise it is my highest genre this year. It just, not a surprise from a year where I did a lot of rereading and a lot of it was Paranormal Romance. So because I had 24 titles in that section. The next highest was 21 with classics. I am very happy with this number. I was surprised I got that many classics done this year. I always get quite a bit in Victober and Jane Austen July, but I did a lot better throughout the year than I thought I would. I mean, I still missed a lot of ones I wanted to get to, but I'm really happy with 21 titles that were classics, and so that comes out to was 13.6% because the paranormal was 15.6. So I mean, still I'm pretty good. And then the next ones are quite a little bit lower. Fantasy came in third. Does not surprise me. Again, big fantasy reader in all different genres of fantasy, but this is like more just standard fantasy. I didn't put it in any classification. I got 11% for that with 17 titles. Still seems low to me, but again, I read a lot of paranormal, so that's probably where most of that went. The fourth highest was 15 titles of nonfiction history. So one of my, I read a lot of nonfiction, like as I said, but nonfiction history is my favorite one. History events a book that goes through those events of that is definitely one of my favorites to read. So it doesn't surprise me that that's the next one. And then number 5 is contemporary fiction, which sounds really weird until you take out 10 of those were translated works. And when I read translated works, almost all of them are contemporary fiction from all across the world. So for some reason, that is where most of my contemporary fiction is coming from right now, because I do not like to read, especially American contemporary fiction. I am really against it right now, like romance, literary, or whatever you want to call it, like general fiction. I do not read contemporary very often at all, but almost all my translated, like a lot of my translated works are considered are contemporary. It's just not my contemporary. Does that make sense? I don't know. But that was my top 5 was, and that had 12 titles from that. So just that's kind of a weird stat. Anyway, but if you combined all my SFF categories, again, I had things like urban fantasy, which was the number 6, sorry, of the top. If you do those, with the ones I just talked about, then urban fantasy, memoir, general nonfiction, science fiction, mystery, history, historical romance, fantasy, I talked fantasy, modern classics, historical fiction, horror, alternate history, children's middle grade, nature nonfiction, social studies, and magical realism. If you go through all of those and you pull out all the ones that I put in for SFF, like fantasy, horror, sci-fi, magical realism, paranormal romance, I read 66 titles. So 42.85% of my reading is fantastical in some way, and that does not surprise me at all. Fantasy is my favorite genre, and but I love all different kinds of fantasy. So you can see, like, there's a lot of different ones in there, and again, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't surprise me to be 42%. I'm actually surprised it's not higher percentage than that. But that's good because that means I read a lot of different things, which is, I know I buy a lot of different genres. If I want to do classics, as I said, it was a really high modern and classics was 15.6%. So still pretty good of my reading. Could always do better. And then I just threw my romance between historical romance, contemporary, and paranormal, and it came out to about 20% of my reading. Again, paranormal is in both of those sections. You just got to know that, but I count them in both. But just to show you that a lot of fantasy is definitely one of my high things. Anyway, star ratings. So I had, what did I say, 19 5-star reads, so that was 16.2%. I had 60 4-star reads, which is 51.3%. So I rate a lot of things 4 stars. I am not gonna, like, as long as I enjoyed the ride and I would consider rereading it again, it is a 4-star for me. A 5-star is one I know I'm going to reread, and that, or made an impact on my life in some way. So again, 5s I still give out quite a few. I mean, I gave out 16% of my reading was a 5-star, so that's maybe not as good as I was thinking, but it's still pretty good. But 51% is 4 stars, which, again, I read a lot of authors that I already like. That is one thing I did not track, is new to me authors. I didn't even think of that till now. Oh well, whatever. But I do, like I said, I read a lot of this. And again, these are all the books that are new to me. So of the 117 that were new. So still, that's still, I think, I give out 4s a lot. That's like my favorite star rating, I guess I give out. A 3-star to me is like, again, is a good read. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and I'm probably never going to reread it, and I will probably get rid of the book, unless it's in a series that I need to keep it for. But I had 34 3-star reads for 29%. I had only 2 stars, which is pretty good for me. I usually give out more than that in a year, but those were 2 Victorian classic collabs that I did not enjoy either one of them very well, for Dickens. Sorry about that. But those are 2. And then my 1-star read, which was the worst book I read this year, which is The Tenant of Waffle Hall. I can appreciate it, but I hated that book. So anyway, so that was only like less than 1% was that one book. So really my, I didn't do an average, my Goodreads one I have, they gave that to me. So I'm going to go with that one. So, but let's just say it's still pretty good, I think, overall. And I didn't rate one middle grade book that our kids book that I got, just because it was a nostalgia thing. I just wanted to read it for the heck of it, and I enjoyed reading it just because it wasn't what I remembered. Anyway, so I didn't rate it because I'm not target audience. Anyway, so books bought. So here we are. Here we are with the bad number. So I bought 236 books this year. So technically, I bought a lot less books than I did in 2019. But in 2020, I only got to go to one library bookstore, so I spent a lot more money. Was not good. And of the books that I bought, 45 of those I read either within the year or they were bought for reread. So during lockdown, I bought a couple of series that I didn't own physically. I either had them in ebook. Yeah, most of them are all ebooks, and I go, I want the physical copies. So I bought physicals. No, there are 3 series I bought. So I bought all those from independent bookstores during May. I think it was, yeah, May and June, I think. And so I bought a lot of books that I had already read before, but I know I'll reread them. They're all in series that I love. So again, so 17 of those, you know, they were for rereads. But most of those, just under 30, were books that I read during the year. So that's not a great percentage. 4 of the books that I bought last year I DNF'd in the year. So I got rid of quite a few, but I did add 187 books to my TBR. That is not good. So we are working on that this year, but I just wanted to give that out. Audiobooks, I bought 33. I have Audible, so a lot of those were bought either for the daily deal or with a credit, or a credit that like you got to buy 2 at one, which is a lot of times I save my credits for the sales. So anyway, I bought 33 of them. I bought way too many. I only listened to 7 of those. I listened to quite a few others, of course, for my numbers, but only 7 of them that I bought within that year did I read. And then 2 of them I'm in the middle of, so they're kind of out of that. So I added, what is that? I added just over 20 audiobooks to my library, which I really didn't need to. I have plenty of things to listen to, but anyway. And then ebooks, this is where I'm having trouble. So I've always tried to curb my ebooks in the last couple of years because I do not read them as much as I should, which is again why I'm trying this year to remind myself to read my ebooks. So, but I still tried to curb myself and I still bought 53 ebooks. Again, most of those were really cheap ones. There's only one that I paid like full price for because it was Nalini Singh, and I'm always buying her because I don't want to buy the hardback, so I buy the ebook. So I only paid for one that was over $10, or now I paid like $13 or $14 for it. But everything else is like maybe $6 at the most. Most of them are all $1, $2, and $3. You know, I don't, or maybe $4. Like I don't pay a whole lot more. There's like Gail Carriger, I'll pay a little bit more, but most everybody else is pretty cheap. But I still bought way too many. I only read 12 of them. And that's kind of, so I put 41 on my TBR. So again, this year I'm trying to add more ebooks into my reading because I found this number and I just freaked out a little bit because I need to stop. And of course, what did I do the first week of this year, this 2020 Wars? I bought several ebooks that went on sale, and I'm like, why did I do that to myself? Well, anyway, ebooks I need to work on. Okay, so translated books. I read 16 translated books for 13.7% of my new books that I read. So not as good as I was hoping. I was hoping to get closer to 20. Actually, I would just have loved to hit 15, but I didn't even hit that. So I thought I had read more translated works than I did. I don't know. I guess this year I just didn't read as many. I did read quite a few. I just think I didn't read enough during the year. I read them in certain times and then I didn't read any. So I'm hoping this year with the Invisible Cities project, I'm going to be reading more nonfiction. I mean, more, well, nonfiction as well as I'm going to read a lot more translated works. So hopefully that number will be higher next year. We'll see. And then my writers of color, I had 14.5%. So it's something I definitely need to work on. I did read more than a couple percents more than I did last year. So I read 17 titles. I need to read more. As I said, I'm thinking though around the world, reading the translated works will also help with that. So I'm trying to be a little bit more, trying to get more of those read. So then I don't know. My next question was about how many books are left on my, like how many are on my physical TBR right now. So I did not count this year because I haven't got around to it. But in approximate with what I had last year, with what I brought in, what I've culled, and what I've read, I think I have about 1,150 books on my TBR physically here. Again, a lot of those are classics that is going to take me a long time to get through. I have a lot of nonfiction now, going to get a long time to go through. And I have a lot of books that are in series where I need to read the next book and then I have like several after it. I have a lot of books. Anyway, point is, I mean, I'm trying to curb myself, but the point is I would say about 1,150 of my books are unread on my shelves right now. So again, I'm going to work on getting my percentage up of reading books I own and not bringing in as many as I have been. But again, that's an estimate. It's not perfect, but it's around that. So then my reading goals, just to come back to, I said I wanted to read 52 reading on Goodreads. I wanted to read at least 52 books. I got that right. Got that done. Making my 50 pages a day on average every month, which I did. My average per day for the year of 2020 was 115.8 pages. That is excellent. I made it over 100. I can't believe it. I think this is the first year I've made it that far over 100 on average per day. Usually I'm just below that. So this was an excellent year for that, although, you know, a lot of those rereading helped, but the ones that I counted. But really, I read quite a bit per day on average. So I still, as I said, my number was higher than I assumed. So it was really good. And then I did do 2 Collings in June and December. And those books are all stacked in my guest bedroom waiting for when I can take them in to be sold or to sell them or to donate them. So I just haven't done that yet. I did hit 15 countries in where I read, but I am very disappointed in the fact that 56 of the new books that I read, 47.9% came from the US. And that's too high. I need to get it lower. So I'm hoping the Invisible Cities Project is going to help in 2021, but 35 of the titles, or 30%, came from the UK. And then the next highest was Japan at 5%. I did 6 titles, which actually is low for me for Japan. Usually I have quite a few Japanese books on my TBR. As I said, I think I was just small on my translation last year, so I'm going to work on that. I had 4 from Canada and 3 from New Zealand, 2 from Korea, 2 from France and Scotland, and then I had 1 each of Germany, Chile, Norway, Finland, Belarus, Poland, and the Czech Republic. So, as I said, I think that's 15 countries. So I did pretty good, but not great. And then the years published, I hit a lot of different areas, but I just want to talk about my oldest book was in 1722. So I'm very, that was a Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. So I'm glad I did that. That was the oldest. I read a lot of Victorian literature and Regency, so that's pretty good. I read a lot I read 1 or 2 titles all the way through almost every decade in the 1900s. And then the 2000s is where most of my reading is from, like, let's say the top one is 2020. I could not believe I read 21 titles from 2020. And I think it's because there's certain authors, as soon as their book comes out, I read those. So those ones I keep on top of those series. And then a lot of the translated works this year I did get were new releases. So that could be also that. Because the 18% came from, that I read, was from 2020, which I was surprised about. And then the next one was from 2019, which is 13 titles. So you can see there's like a huge drop from the 21 down to 13. Anyway, but so 11% came from 2019. 2000 to 2009 was in 3rd place with 10%, or 12 titles. 2010 to 2013 was 4th with 11 titles at 9.4%. And then I have all the, 2018, 17, 16, 15, 14, and I read, 4 to 6 titles on all of those. So, I mean, again, that whole era that's probably where I did most of my reading beyond the 2020, which is weird. But then again, I did a whole lot of other years. You just have one for a couple of those. And most of my Victorian reads were in the 1840s and 50s. I did 5 titles in each of those decades. So, but I had quite a few in some of the other ones. So overall, that was pretty good. So, and then the only last thing is the Goodreads stats is that they said I only read 537 pages. So, but I think that's because I counted all my DNFs. So, I think it's almost about right for I think it's just off of a few, maybe 100 or 2. I'm not sure. It's not very far off. And they said I read 127 books. So I'm not quite sure how that worked out. Anyway, I know there's a couple of books that I marked that I hadn't marked on there before, but I don't know. They said my average page count per book was 303 pages. So it's like 18-page difference. So I'm not quite sure. That's why I want to track this year a different way to check to see how that works. My shortest book was a 58-page book, the Old Nurse's Story by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I really enjoyed, from the Little Black Classics. The longest book was 759 pages with Thomas Jefferson, The Art of Power by John Meacham. My average rating on Goodreads says it was 3.8 stars. So I looked back at 2019 and I was 3.9. So I was kind of surprised. But I think it's because I had less 5-star reads this year than I did last year. So anyway, but 3.8 is still pretty good. I figure anything over 3.5 is good. So I'm fine with 3.8. The highest rated of the books that I read was The Last Plane in the Sky, which I totally agree with. That was an awesome book. And what was the other one? Oh, the most popular book was Metamorphosis by Frank Kafka. I'm like, anyway, that was weird. And least popular was Hidden History of Civil War Oregon, because like nobody's read that but like me and a couple others. It was pretty interesting because my dad let me borrow that book, one of the borrowed books. Anyway, and then this was the highest year I had in page count since I started Goodreads in middle of 2010. So pretty good that way, and that most books recorded since then too. So it was my highest year of that, not counting the rereads, just the new books to me. So overall, I think it was a really good year overall, but there's so many places for improvement. And again, I just love stats, and I went on way too long here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Any of those out here who like that. I wish I had little graphs and stuff. The only things I did in my journal this year, because I forgot to set it up for 2020, I mean, I didn't forget, I just didn't do it, is I did do the pixel to show all the reading I did. And you can see where I did a lot of rereading with the dots. If it has a black dot in the thing, it means that I reread. So it shows, again, if you get more of the blues and purples, more of the blues, that's the higher number days. The reds were kind of middle. Yellow was, again, they were mostly rereads or wasn't reading. So, and the oranges were low. So, and greens were kind of low. So there's not that many. Most of it are in the, are in my 50 to 200 pages a day, which I think is really good, which is kind of where I read a lot of. So that worked out. And then, again, anyway, then this is the book spot. As I said, my only last library book sale was in February, so that's why it's so high. But price per book was pretty low. But anyway, so these is where I bought way too much for my vacation. Anyway, so way too many books. And that's kind of it. And then I did go on and do 2021, which I will show you at the end of January. So, and hopefully, maybe I can get up kind of a reading journal video. I did try it and it just kind of failed on me. I can't get the phone to record it straight on without it flipping the screen. Anyway, I haven't figured that out yet. I'll figure it out. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed those stats. If you think of anything I should track this year, let me know now so I can start putting it into my data. It takes so long to get all this stuff together, but it's really a lot of information. I know that probably made no sense whatsoever, but I hope it did to those who enjoyed that. And it was an interesting year. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.